Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and this is my husband Drew. And on this channel we talk about life and relationships after leaving the church and do some commentary on the goings on in evangelical Christianity. Today we are going to be responding to a video from Michael Knowles. The video that he made is about how Mary on a Cross by the band Ghost is a super sacrilegious song.
Extraordinarily sacrilegious,
yeah, extraordinarily sacrilegious. If you're unfamiliar, Michael Knowles is a political commentator and he is a host on the Dailywire. He's a pretty awful person. He most recently made the statement that transgenderism needs to be eradicated from public life.
Yeah, at CPAC on stage in front of thousands of people. So normal, not completely unhinged stuff.
Michael Knowles is also a devout Catholic, which makes a lot of sense why he decided to react to the band Ghost, because Ghost evokes and inverts Catholic imagery. So it makes sense that he was, interested in this song. Yeah. Real quickly, I do want us to all look at some of the comments on this video because they are hilarious. So someone commented, "Breaking news, local Christian man discovers hard rock music for the very first time."
Bro never tickled anyone internally. That's amazing.
Album name, 7 Inches of Satanic Panic. This guy is Satanic Panic. If you think this is blasphemous, wait until you hear Year Zero.
Yeah, really.
I am happy to see that it seems like a lot of the people commenting are like goofing on him.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't seem like people are really agreeing with him
that
much. So before we dive into his video, I do want to take a few minutes to talk about the band and talk about the lore of the band, because it's really important in order to make our commentary make any sense.
Yeah.
Ghost is a theatrical rock band that was founded by Tobias Forge. It's kind of difficult to put Ghost in a particular genre.
Yeah.
I think they've been called anything from like doom metal to prog rock to pop rock.
Yeah.
But I feel like they are most accurately described as occult rock. What do you think about that?
Oh, yeah. I hadn't thought of that categorization, but thinking of the sounds of like Coven.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I'm going to read a brief synopsis I wrote about the band's lore. Tobias has developed a fictional universe around the band. In the Ghost universe, the band is the public relations arm for a satanic church. Their task is to spread their satanic message all over the world. The band members are completely masked and referred to as nameless ghouls, and are led by a demonic anti-pope called Papa Emeritus, played by Tobias. There have been many reincarnations of Papa. The last Papa was Papa 4, who, spoiler alert, you guys will know if you watched Right Here, Right Now, but he was actually promoted to Frater Imperator, the head of the clergy. It's not clear right now who will be the next Papa, although it's suspected to be Papa 4's twin brother. The band is also managed by an organization called the Clergy, which was previously led by Sister Imperator. So I know that's a lot of information, so hopefully that makes sense to you guys. Okay, so the song Mary on a Cross, which is the song that Michael Knowles is reacting to, it was released in 2019, but it actually ended up going viral on TikTok a few years ago.
Yeah.
And because it went viral, it kind of boosted Ghost's popularity, and Ghost found a new demographic of listeners, specifically younger women, people that would be on TikTok. I actually found Ghost around the time that Mary on a Cross was going viral, but it wasn't because of TikTok. One of my friends actually posted about the band's tour on Instagram, and I was really captivated by the marketing for the tour, because it's like you have Papa in his black robes, and he's like looming above the earth, and he's like shooting lightning out of his fingertips. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, I need to know what this band is all about.
Yeah.
And I started listening to their music and just, from there was really into them. I say the song Call Me Little Sunshine got me in the door with Ghost, but Year Zero was what really
sealed
kept
the
me.
deal.
Yeah, sealed the deal. Before we dive into his actual video, I do want to take a brief moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, the Paired app. You all know that Drew and I spend a lot of time on this channel talking about relationships and discussing the ways that we go about cultivating trust and healthy communication in our relationship.
Yeah.
And the Paired app is a new tool we've been using to grow together. A few of my friends have actually raved about the Paired app, so I was really excited when they reached out to me to partner on this video. Paired is a relationship care app that offers daily couples questions, relationship games, quizzes, and exercises. And they're all designed to spark meaningful conversations and deepen intimacy. What's really cool is that Paired is backed up by leading experts in research, so you can rest assured that the app is designed to bring you closer to your partner. Another cool thing is that when you start a quiz, you can't see how your partner answered the questions until both of you have responded. It can be very illuminating to see how your partner responds to different questions, because sometimes they'll answer in a way that you're not expecting, or maybe neither of you have ever thought to ask one another about a certain topic. The Paired app really is a great relationship companion. So Drew and I actually did a Plan Your Perfect Partner Day quiz. Was there anything that I responded with that you were kind of surprised that I said?
Well, the only thing that you said about me on this quiz that you actually got wrong was snacks, the movies. That was my perfect dinner plans. You probably just didn't anticipate that I would read snacks so literally, because I famously, yes, do like to go and eat at the movies, but dinner, not snacks.
Yeah.
Whereas for you, I answered that your dream dinner plans would be a romantic restaurant, because I interpret it as snacks. If it would have been, dinner at the movies, I would have been like, oh yeah, absolutely. That's what you would have wanted to do too. Something I was not surprised about is that you would have said that the best way to wrap up a day is cuddles in bed. I guess I was just thinking that maybe you were feeling like getting drinks somewhere trendy at the moment that I answered this.
Yeah.
But cuddles in bed, yes.
I think it was the trendy part. Like, I don't really care about going somewhere trendy.
Yeah.
But I do like getting drinks.
Yeah.
But maybe at like
a pub.
A pub or like an outdoor patio or something. I personally think that not only is the Paired app great for new couples who are in the early stages of their relationship, but it's also great for partners who've been together for longer, like Drew and I, because it helps connect on a deeper level rather than falling into the monotony in our relationship. If you've been looking for a new way to deepen intimacy in your relationship, then I highly recommend giving the Paired app a chance. If you click the link in the description box below, you can get a 7-day free trial and 25% off Paired Premium. I think there's really no time like the present to start working on your relationship and improving your communication as a couple. A big thank you to the Paired app for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to the video. Now we are going to dive into his actual video, and he does kind of just listen to the song for a while, which I'm not completely sure how he did that with monetization and everything.
It's because they're a big name in production and media at this point. It's a multi-million dollar production agency, the Dailywire. So they probably just pulled strings with people and were able to do it.
I'm wondering too, because it's a live version and there's some like background noise. I don't know if that changes it, but we are going to listen to that because he does add some commentary here and there. So I think it's important that we listen to it, but we'll see how I fix the monetization issue in editing.
This is a song. They warned me about this song a little bit, so we'll see how much we get into it. Probably not very far. The song is called Mary on a Cross. The artist is Ghost. The album is 7 Inches of Satanic Panic. The producer suggested I listen to this because it's got like a zillion views. It's got 95 million views on audio, 50 million views on a live performance. It's not a new song, but it's made a comeback across the internet's most popular songs on TikTok and Instagram. A lot of people are using it. So in any case, let's see how far I make it into this before I throw something at the screen.
I like how he's decided already that he doesn't like it. He hasn't even listened to it yet, and he's already like, this is going to be shit.
Well, it's rock and roll. What do you expect?
It's a song that my papa used to sing, actually. You might like this one.
A lot of church imagery, but then a lot of kind of demonic costuming.
I like how he says it's demonic, but I mean, in reality, they're just using Catholic imagery and making it ever so slightly spookier. I've seen Catholic churches that look way spookier than actual ghost shows.
Oh, yeah.
I don't mind the music part of it. It's kind of like just 80s, somewhat lame.
Excuse me? Did you just call it lame?
I bet that he has absolutely killer music taste. Tell me your favorite hymn there, buddy. Riveting commentary from Michael Knowles. Doesn't he have like a $50 million a year contract?
They're dressed like nuns.
They are dressed like nuns. Good observation there, Mikey. I feel like this man has never seen a concert before.
I know. He's like, what is this?
There we go. All right. I guess that's why it's considered sacrilegious and blasphemous, which it obviously is. So let me see. I'll scan the lyrics very quickly and just see if there's anything worth even talking about here. Holy Mary. I assume this would refer to Our Lady, the mother of God. Like Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now at the hour of our death. Amen. Mary on a cross. And then obviously there's this disgusting sexual lyric later, which means probably the earlier ones are somewhat sexual.
He's referring to when it says you go down.
Yeah.
Just like Holy Mary, which I'm sure you'll discuss is not necessarily a sexual thing.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to interpret it that way, you can.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily the intention.
Yeah. Well, just as Ben Shapiro is sure to keep his wife as dry as possible, Michael Knowles says, I'm not going down like anyone.
After all the sorrow, riding high, repeat. Yeah. Okay, well, I guess that's pretty much it. Yeah, okay. All right, not surprised. Look, it's a fallen world where this is a world that is enthralled to principalities and spiritual wickedness in high places.
Oh my gosh. You know what I think that this guy needs?
What does he need?
I think he just needs to get his taint tickled. Then he would really understand the meaning of this song.
Did you feel it? Where did you feel it?
In my taint. That is a joke for all the Ghost fans out there.
Yeah.
So I just find it so interesting that he just listens to like not even half of the song, does a very quick scan of the lyrics, and thinks he knows enough about the song and its meaning to like provide a commentary to his audience.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you can tell, he's got this preloaded narrative.
Yeah.
It wouldn't matter if he listened to the song or not. It wouldn't matter if he knew the content or like anything about Tobias or the rest of the band, anything. He doesn't need to know any of that. He's going to say what he's going to say from the very beginning, which is, oh, we live in a fallen world. We fight demons. Demons are totally real. And, what do you expect from horrible, godless feminists and
he's just
whatever.
assuming that they're horrible and godless because they look scary.
Yeah.
You and I talk about this a lot, but I have this theory that there's this spectrum that exists in like personality. So on one side of the spectrum, you have people who like really embrace complexity, and then on the other side you have people that like require simplicity.
Yeah.
In other words, people will either look at the world through a complex lens or look at the world and have to see like everything in simple terms.
Yeah.
And I think that Michael Knowles is definitely one of those people that like requires simplicity. He needs it to be a simple narrative. And, I think that he is naturally kind of predisposed towards that. But like you were saying, it's almost required, like his narrative of the world and like the conservative propaganda basically that he spews requires him to like maintain that simplicity.
Yeah. I mean, I think that even if he personally didn't buy into it, I think that he could still do what he does. I think his audience are the people he's really trying to feed into. They're, I think, largely disillusioned young white men who want a simplistic narrative that has to do with putting them on top and saying that any privilege that anybody else enjoys besides for you is actually persecution of you, is actually turning the world topsy-turvy. Simple narrative of you're the good guy. Everyone else that doesn't like my YouTube channel and like the Daily Wire, they're all bad and transcendently bad.
Yeah.
Just look at how horrible their music is. It's so lame.
So let's discuss the actual possible meanings of this song.
Okay.
Obviously, songs are open to interpretation. There isn't necessarily like one meaning, but I think Tobias has given us some information on this, and I think that there's like educated guesses that we can give. I'm going to be referring again to my notes here because there's just a lot of information. So the first possible interpretation is that the song is about weed, because in Sweden, which Tobias is Swedish, marijuana is pronounced Mariana. And then at the very end of the song live, you'll hear Papa like singing Mariana, and then he'll say marijuana.
And then they go into the next song with all the green lights and everything.
Well, that's because that song's Mummy Dust, which is about money.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, that makes more sense. Well, it works on two levels.
Yeah, it does work on two levels. There's also references in the song to riding high. And the line tickle you internally, it could mean coughing because of weed.
Okay.
It could also mean sex, but...
Sure.
So another possible meaning is pining for a lost love or lost friendship. And in lore, there's a character called Papa Nile, and he is possibly pining for Sister Imperator. So Papa Nile was a former frontman of the band, and he was in a relationship with Sister Imperator, and they're the parents to Papa 4, interestingly. Okay. Sister Imperator left him after he kissed a woman at one of his shows, as shown in the music video for Kiss the Go-Goat.
You would think that that was allowed within the Satanic church, but I guess they don't appreciate that there either.
No, she was not happy about it at all. This interpretation of the song, I believe, is the official interpretation by the band because it's in lore.
Right.
And Mary on a Cross is supposedly a re-release of a EP that Papa Nile wrote in the 60s, the 7 Inches of Satanic Panic.
Oh, yeah.
That's apparently supposed to be attributed to Papa Nile, and he wrote that, and it's just like a re-release.
Okay.
Yeah, you're going to be learning a lot of information in this. In this interpretation, the reference here could be to Mary, Mother of Jesus, with the feminine love interest representing a path of redemption for the lover, hence Mary on a cross. So Tobias did do an interview with someone where he talked about the possible meanings of the song, and he was told, or he found out from his daughter's friends, that people were thinking that the song is really perverse because of the line, you go down. And he seemed pretty like offended by that in the interview.
She heard somewhere that it's perverse.
I don't think it's. I wouldn't think that it's perverse.
So I can just clear up that
Maybe some kind of an addiction or something is happening within there.
Yeah. And there are multiple layers of the lyrics that might be might be important for people to understand.
He said that go down doesn't necessarily mean something sexual, but rather as go down in history.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I could see that too.
He also said the Mary might not be referring to Mary, Jesus's mother, but Mary Magdalene, a follower of Jesus who's mostly remembered or gone down in history as a repentant prostitute. However, the Gnostic Gospels portray her as the apostle of apostles, Jesus's favorite apostle, and the only follower of his who truly understood his teachings.
She was one of the women who discovered that the tomb was empty and went and told everybody first.
Yeah. Mary Magdalene has never been given the credit she's due, and because of patriarchy, her role as an apostle has been greatly downplayed. I also believe that the Gnostic texts discuss Mary Magdalene's unmatched beauty, so to me, that makes sense given the lines in the song, "Your beauty never ever scared me."
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see that connection.
There's also a reference in the song to Bloody Mary, which could be referring to Mary of England, who was England's first woman ruler, who was later mythologized as particularly violent during her rule, even though she didn't have any more blood on her hands than her father or other English monarchs. To me, this song has an underlying message of people being miscredited by history. Okay, and this is the interpretation that I'm most excited about.
Okay.
So Tobias gives us a hint that the song could also be some self-talk. Prior to Ghost, Tobias went by the stage name Mary Gore in his death metal band Repugnant. A possible theory is that Tobias misses his days as Mary Gore and believes that, just like Mary Magdalene, this version of himself wasn't given the credit he's due and won't be remembered by history. After all, Repugnant never went anywhere, but Ghost did.
Yeah.
So despite the stardom and glamour that's talked about in the song that he's experienced with Ghost and as Papa, maybe he's never really let go of Mary Gore. It's pretty obvious from the band shirts that Tobias wears, at least from what we've seen in pictures, that he's a fan of heavier metal. We see him wearing shirts from like the band Death and Mayhem and stuff like that. And Mary on a Cross is one of Ghost's more poppy songs. Yeah. So I wonder if this was purposeful, like a statement along the lines of, here I am singing this pop rock stuff, but I really wish that I was doing like heavier shit, like when I was in Repugnant.
He misses those days.
This is just a theory, and I could be totally wrong, but if it's true, I do wonder how Tobias feels about Mary on a Cross going viral and gaining Ghost a new fan base, because there's just so much irony in that.
Yeah.
Isn't that super interesting?
Yeah, I see that. Well, here's my take on the interpretations. We live in a fallen world. We just live in a fallen world. That's what it is. Demons are real, and they're actually demons. Okay, next song.
We can't possibly entertain all this complexity here.
No, well, this isn't written in the Bible, so I don't believe it.
So I also wrote here, as you guys can probably tell, there's a lot of layers and nuance to this song, and when we approach art with built-in assumptions, hand wave away the complexity and try to fit it into good or bad boxes like Michael Knowles did, I think we do ourselves and others a great disservice.
And that's why Christian art sucked ass until the Renaissance, where people started painting Christian scenes, but in ways that connected God and man a lot more so than maybe previous art did.
Because they couldn't be very creative with their... or it just had to be like super simple?
Yeah, I think that things were ridiculously simplistic, and like you said, I mean, it's very difficult to create great art without complexity, without transgression. And that's one of the reasons
the best art is always transgressive.
Absolutely.
The one we're really talking about, silver lining and a touch of gray here. The one notable cultural development from this is the return of blasphemy and sacrilege as having cultural cachet. Probably this is because our culture is just enthralled once again to demons in a really open way that had not been the case for a lot of the period from the Incarnation up through the present. So
I wonder why he thinks that people stopped being as interested in demons for a little while. Is it because we burned all the people who consorted with them?
Yeah,
because we executed all of them?
Yeah, and that's something that we're going to talk about later on in the video, but yeah.
Great.
Our culture is just enthralled once again to demons in a really open way that had not been the case for a lot of the period from the Incarnation up through the present. So up through the revolutions that toppled our civilization.
So he's making a really big claim here. He's making the claim that from the time of the Incarnation, which is when God came down to earth in human flesh.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Until present time. And then he kind of like catches himself and says, until the revolutions that toppled our society, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah, what does that mean?
What does that mean? He makes the claim that society or Western culture hasn't been like interested in the demonic and the satanic,
and blasphemy and things like that,
which I don't think is necessarily the case.
Yeah, he's speaking so broadly that it's hard to tell, but maybe if we assume some of the definitions of some of the terms he's using, we might be able to figure that one out.
Yeah, and then, he says the revolutions that toppled our society. He's pretty vague with that, and I don't know completely what he's trying to say there. My first thought is that he's talking about the sexual revolution, because I think that would make sense given the way that Michael Knowles probably looks at the world.
Yeah.
He would say that things like feminism and the sexual revolution were the things that have led to the like downfall, the slow downfall of like Western culture.
So the toppling of our civilization started to occur in the 1960s.
I think that's what he's saying, but again, I don't know. I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
I think that's probably right given the context, because I think that his audience cares about the fact that they have not tickled someone internally probably quite a bit. And so I think that they do have a lot of scorn and hatred for women who are sexually liberated.
Right.
I think that's probably the primary like political concern for a lot of people in his audience. So I think you're probably right. That said, he is Catholic, and he is not like a normal Catholic. Most Catholics are pretty chill with living in a democratic society where the church does not rule, and this is a way that they ritualize their everyday life. Fine, like no problem with that.
Yeah, he works for the dailywire. So
he is not that.
He's not a normal Catholic or a normal Christian.
He's not representative, and so he could, by referring to the revolutions that toppled our society, he could be referring to like the French Revolution, the American Revolution, where the church, where monarchy, where like the papacy having some kind of actual governmental role was toppled. The church used to be actually in control, like actually could just straight up kill you if you blasphemed. And at a certain point, we were like, no, we're not going to do that anymore. You've killed like tens of millions of people. And now we have a democratic society instead. I mean, it took a while to get there, but yeah. So he could be referring to, other revolutions that are a lot more significant in history, I think, than the sexual revolution. But I agree that I think you're right.
He could be talking about
He's
that.
probably just talking about the sexual revolution in the 60s.
I mean, that's regardless of what he means, that is a really long period of time. And I don't think it's necessarily the case that like our culture is just now enthralled with the demonic.
Oh yeah, no, not at all.
I mean, I think that you could make the case that like starting in the 60s and going into the 70s, that there was kind of like a mania, especially in the US, surrounding the occult.
Yeah.
And that greatly influenced music and movies and pop culture, and that's still something that's like influencing culture today.
Yeah.
And this like fascination with the occult did coincide with the sexual revolution.
Yeah.
Which then makes sense why more conspiratorial Christians will say that like things like feminism or the LGBT community or the pro-choice movement is demonic, and they associate it with like particular demons.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense given that fascination with the occult and the sexual revolution were happening at the same time.
Right.
But some of that fascination with the occult was inspired by much earlier works.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Kind of more of a revival than anything
Yeah,
else.
kind of a revival. And I think that there's kind of two different ways that we can look at this. The first way is by defining enthralled as anyone who reveres the satanic or the demonic, or has a view of the satanic or the demonic that diverts from the Catholic Church in any way.
So anything but negative is enthralled, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's probably how Michael Knowles would define enthralled.
For sure.
So I think that we should talk about individuals and groups throughout history that have held this view of the demonic. So we have John Milton's Paradise Lost that was written in the 17th century that depicts Satan in more nuanced, slightly sympathetic, and kind of more human terms.
Absolutely.
The well-known quote from the poem, "It's better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven," is an understandable sentiment to many, even today.
Yeah.
Later renewed interest in the poem actually sparked an entire genre of literature referred to as Romantic Satanism. An example of this genre is an 1857 poem called The Litanies of Satan that said of Satan that he's the most knowing and loveliest of angels. So that obviously diverts from like the orthodox views of Satan.
Yeah, definitely.
Art from the period of the Enlightenment depicts Satan in more sympathetic terms. Examples of this would be artists like William Blake and Eugene Delacroix. There's also an 1848 sculpture called Lucifer of Liège that depicts Satan as seductive and attractive. Also, during the Enlightenment period, there were some groups of outlaws in Sweden who practiced an unsystematic folk-style Satanism. I thought that was really interesting, yeah. They believed since they were living a life of crime, it was better for them to pray to Satan than to God.
Wow.
Isn't that fascinating?
I've never heard of that. I've only ever heard of some, I mean, this is more legendary, I think, than anything, but there are some folk tales of basically enslaved peoples coming to understand their indigenous myths from Africa through the lens of their slave masters. So instead of seeing their gods as things like water spirits, they come to see their gods and their spirits as demons and devils and the devil, Satan.
Oh, interesting.
And so they say things like, oh, you know, I'd rather worship Satan than God. God's never done anything for me. He only does things for the white man. Again, this is kind of, I think, more legendary than anything. But there's some folk legends in America of that.
Interesting. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, there were various groups that popped up that viewed Satan as a positive figure, such as the Theosophical Society in New York City and the Temple de Satan in Paris. There's also Anatole France's 1914 work called The Revolt of the Angels, and you actually made a whole video about this, so I thought that you could briefly summarize that work.
This is a fiction novel written in 1914, you said, and it's basically about a second war in heaven. You know, the angels revolted at one point, a third of them were cast out, they became demons, and ever since then, they have been trying to figure out how to get back into heaven and how to take over and rule heaven again. So this book follows people, or devils, angels, demons, whatever you want to call them, banding together to try to wage this war, organizing things. And this is a spoiler, but on the literal eve of Satan stepping in to displace God, to take God's throne, he ends up saying, no, I don't need to take God's throne. They call him Yaldabaoth. They call God Yaldabaoth. We don't need to have another Yaldabaoth. We don't need to have another tyrant. If I assume total power as Satan, the most like lovely and just of all angels, I will become a tyrant.
Yeah.
Because I will have total power.
Right.
Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Right.
So he says, instead of destroying Yaldabaoth and creating another, we must all destroy the Yaldabaoth within ourselves. So that means that we need to destroy any kind of desire for total control or rule of other people and rule nothing but ourselves.
Yeah.
So it, in a way, it does carry forward the kind of classically satanic idea that of self-ownership. But it also has a very others-focused and justice-focused outlook as well. You know, we don't need to rule over other people in a totalitarian way. If we assume too much power because we think we've gotten it right, we will become the most evil and disgusting thing possible. We'll become Yaldabaoth.
And I think Revolt of the Angels is one of TST's, the Satanic Temple's, like, what do they call it? Like one of their founding works?
It's their only canonical text.
Yeah. Which I find really fascinating.
Yeah, it's a great book.
I also think that this is interesting because I do wonder how much Tobias Forge was inspired by the Revolt of the Angels, because the narrative within that work is a little bit similar to the narrative that is woven through the first 3 albums, which we'll talk about later. But I wonder, maybe it didn't inspire it at all, and I'm just reaching here, but
I know a little bit about it and would be surprised if it didn't have some influence.
Yeah. And then, of course, there is the infamous Aleister Crowley in the early 1900s, who was an occultist who viewed Satan as a passionate and noble spirit. These are just a few examples. There's obviously a lot more examples of people that view Satan and the demonic in a slightly different way. Yeah. But I think it's clear that there were groups, there was cultural movements that saw Satan in at least more sympathetic terms from the period of the incarnation until like now.
Right,
Yeah.
right. A hypothesis that I have is one of the reasons why it seems like there's so much interest in demons and devils and the occult and Satan and things like that after the toppling of more authoritarian powers in Europe is that people were just more okay to talk about the things that they were already doing and already thinking in private.
They're more free to make that a little bit more publicly known.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I do think that it's probably more likely that you had very educated people in the aristocracy, like the Romantics, that were interested in this stuff. I think like the common people probably didn't have enough education to really question the myths that they were force-fed by the Catholic Church and the Anglican Church as much. But I do think that even when the Catholic Church was completely in power, there was a huge diversity of understanding of mythological creatures and beings and devils and things like that. They just probably didn't get recorded because the Catholic Church, if they found out, would just kill you.
Yeah. Yeah, they really stamped that all out, probably. But there is another way that I think that we can think about this, because when I think of the term enthralled, I don't necessarily think of someone viewing whatever they're enthralled with in like a positive light. I kind of see enthralled more as like an obsession or preoccupation with.
Yeah.
And I think that we can definitely make the argument that the church and Christianity has had way more of a preoccupation with Satan and the demonic than like non-Christians ever have. I mean, if you look back through history, whatever brand of Christianity happened to be dominant at the time, they always stoked the flames of the demonic and the satanic, and they would accuse whatever outgroup existed of being in league with Satan.
Yeah. Yeah, they're the ones who made up the myth. They are the ones who made up the symbols. It belongs to them, at least originally it came from them, and then they get very upset that other people use their myths in another way, acting like those myths and those ideas actually belong to those other people in this very perverse, hard to understand system of theirs.
Right. So I want to like briefly talk about the different individuals and groups throughout time that have accused others of being demonic and stoked fears of the demonic. In 1199, Pope Innocent III established the church-wide institution of the Inquisition to find and punish heretics. Heretics were, of course, accused of being demonic. In the 13th century, a rumor spread about German Luciferians who did things like defecate on sacramental bread.
I know that's supposed to sound really bad, but that's just kind of funny. Like, imagine being like, okay, guys, we need a new military. We need a new faction of the military because we need to go kill all these guys. What do? They shit on some bread.
I mean, what are you doing when you take the, what's it called, Eucharist? The Holy Communion?
Yeah.
I mean, you're shitting out Jesus's body. I mean, how much more gross is that?
You're turning Jesus into shit.
Right.
I think that's a lot worse.
That's a lot worse. Then there was the Hammer of Witches, which was a guidebook on witch hunting that really shaped how the culture at the time viewed women and witchcraft.
I'd imagine so.
And the witch trials that were associated with the Hammer of Witches from about the 1400s until the 1700s, in which mostly women were accused of witchcraft.
Of course.
It's thought that somewhere between 50,000 to 100,000 supposed witches were executed during that time. Yeah.
Wow.
Probably the most famous of that being, in the U.S. at least, being the Salem witch trials.
I mean, back then, that's an entire population of a giant city.
Yeah.
That's insane.
It's terrifying. Then there's the Exorcist movie, which was more recent in 1973. Despite it being of the horror genre, this movie could be described as somewhat religious.
Oh, yeah.
Of the Holy Cross of our Lord Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with the Father and the Holy Spirit. Damien!
It greatly influenced how Christians think of the demonic and exorcisms today, and sparked a new wave of exorcisms. There were even Catholic exorcists at the time who were saying that how the Exorcist movie portrayed exorcisms was very accurate.
Yeah, Father Gabriel Amorth, who was the guy depicted in the newer horror movie Pope's Exorcist, said that The Exorcist was his favorite movie.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And that's one of the things that inspired him to become like this very famous and influential exorcist.
Right, yeah. And if you guys want to learn more about that, I highly recommend reading The Exorcist Effect by Joseph Laycock. It goes into detail about that. It's really good. Then there was Ed and Lorraine Warren. The demon hunters who subscribed to a strange brand of Christianity that was permissive of Lorraine's clairvoyancy, which I find so weird.
I mean, it makes sense to adapt your theology to make money.
Well, yeah.
For them.
Ed and Lorraine were constantly embellishing and sometimes completely inventing the cases of demonic possession that they worked on.
Yeah.
They're still, unfortunately, widely revered today, despite their fraud, and are main characters in the popular Conjuring franchise.
What? What is it?
Well, rancid smells could indicate some type of demonic activity.
I mean, a lot of the Conjuring movies are well made, but we're kind of worshiping some of the most disgusting scam artists of the 20th century in revering Ed and Lorraine through this. I mean, they were just going to people's homes that were having really serious domestic issues, whether it was abuse or really extreme forms of abuse or mental illness, and saying, "Hey, if you say it's demons and we get the news here, I'll give you $100,000. And then they would make $10 million off of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel conflicted about the Conjuring movies now, like learning about Ed and Lorraine and how they were basically just grifters, because I still really like the Conjuring movies.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird. And then there was the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s and the book Michelle Remembers, which I thought that you could kind of summarize a little bit for us.
So the book Michelle Remembers is this memoir. It has been very thoroughly debunked, found to be false, but the memoir is of this therapist who spoke to a young woman who recalled all of her experiences of satanic ritual abuse. So I weirdly don't really have to explain what that means, because I think most people have a really vivid image of what this is, which would not have existed prior to Michelle Remembers. You wouldn't have an image of like what satanic ritual abuse is. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you know, you're getting tied down by a big fire. You're having all these daggers stabbed into you. You're being impregnated. You're having something ripped out of your womb. It's being sacrificed. All these like crazy, ridiculous, stupid things that don't actually happen. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's the narrative of Michelle Remembers. And there was a lot of media that was kind of about this in the early 70s, and eventually by the 80s you had things like Dungeons and Dragons getting very popular, and some very irresponsible journalists realized that they can make sensationalistic stories about satanic ritual abuse being suspected of happening in this sleepy small town. And I think really the best way to summarize it is people realized they could make money off of sensationalistic headlines. People started taking those sensationalistic headlines very seriously. Some people started acting them out, including actual police officers and, you know, entire police departments. And then it just kind of spiraled out of control from there. People were falsely imprisoned. People were, you know, killed over this. And a lot of ridiculous journalists and people like Michael Knowles, but back in the 1980s, made a lot of money off of it. Yeah.
And there was like the Geraldo special that like basically just like stoked the fears of the satanic panic, and then he ended up apologizing for it like years later.
Are there secret Satanists lurking in your local family video? We go to find out. And then they just interview a bunch of people about like, why are you selling this? It's a movie. It's a movie that's about Christian stuff.
Yeah.
It's about Christian ideas.
This is coming from your book, guys.
Yeah.
And then finally, there is the more current example of QAnon, a movement in the religious right, and their conspiracy theory that leftist elites are in league with Satan and are committing satanic ritual abuse to extract adrenochrome.
Which you can get extremely cheaply because it can be fully synthesized. You don't have to torture children in order to get it. It's actually a very cheap, very available drug.
Right. So I think this leads us to ask ourselves, who is really responsible for the current enthrallment with the satanic and the demonic? Is it non-Christians and supposed Satanists, or is it Christianity?
I think it's a combination of pundits and journalists, people like Michael Knowles, but back then, propping it up and talking about it in order to catch attention. And then a bunch of people like Michael Knowles' audience buying into it and being like, wow, I didn't realize. And Michael Knowles' people are like, oh yeah, and make sure and buy my next book that talks about it. Yeah. I think that's pretty much the explanation.
Right.
In the Middle Ages, the swear words, the vulgar, profane words tended to be sacrilegious words. And there are all sorts of examples of it, many of which are now probably unintelligible to people. But they would refer to the wounds of Christ, for instance, or they would refer to Our Lady or something. And then in recent years, we talked about this on the show about a month ago. In recent years, profanity and vulgarity has been more bodily, I suppose, just like things about like copulation and, bodily fluids and all sorts of gross stuff. And the sacrilegious ones have fallen out of favor because people didn't take religion that seriously. And so now you might say, well, with the return of this kind of sacrilege, this is further evidence. We're moving even further away from Christianity. But in a way, it means people are taking religion more seriously. The fact that these people are dressing up like nuns, the fact that this whole set looks kind of like a church, with stained glass and even crosses there, and the fact that they would sing these hideous, hideous things about Mary.
Hideous. I'm sorry. I keep thinking that from Nacho Libre.
Like hideous.
Again, from the text, it would seem to imply that we're talking about Mary, the Mother of God. It could be Mary Magdalene.
There you go.
It could be Mary. It could be any of the other Marys in the Bible. There are multiple other Marys in the Old Testament.
It's interesting that he admits that there's other ways that you can interpret it, but then he goes on to still say that this one interpretation, like he builds an entire argument and case for why ghost is wrong and immoral based off of this like one particular interpretation.
Yeah, that's true.
Or in the New Testament, rather. But it seems textually the phrase Holy Mary would probably refer to Mary, the Mother of God. And so the fact that that is so extraordinarily sacrilegious and blasphemous makes me think that as the old lower gods, the demons, return to now explicit worship in some cases. We put up a Baphomet statue in a state capitol in the United States just months ago.
I love it when people pretend that they don't actually know why the Satanic Temple does what it does.
How many times do you guys have to be told this?
Yeah.
Like, they know that TSD is non-theistic. They know that they don't literally worship Satan or Baphomet.
You're either really stupid or you're lying, and I don't think you're really stupid. So
I think he's lying.
Yeah, I think it's just a lie. You know what it's for, and you're just saying that to maintain your narrative.
Right.
As that happens, there will be a re-engagement with religion. And so not that these people, are intending that. They're obviously just intending to give offense to God. But God is not mocked, and he does win in the end. And so in that way, people taking religion a little bit more seriously might, and almost certainly will, redound to the salvation of at least some people, though perhaps others are being a little reckless and foolish.
So he's made a lot of claims within this 2 minutes here. To me, it kind of comes off like a gish gallop. Like he's just giving all of these claims rapid fire so that it kind of confuses people. So going back to one of the first things he said, that in the Middle Ages, more sacrilegious words were in favor, and now that's kind of fallen away, or recently that's kind of fallen away, and it's more about bodily words. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if that's true. That's a claim, but that's all that is.
I mean, yeah, I'm not exactly sure if that props up his idea. The claim that I'm interested in responding to, especially here, is the idea that nobody here is trying to engage in any kind of meaningful spiritual exercise. They're not trying to take religion seriously. They're, just brainlessly and mindlessly trying to offend God and mock God. And they don't realize that God will not be mocked. It's like, actually, yeah, there's an element of blasphemy, which I'm sure that we'll talk about. But I do actually think that if you get into the ghost fan base, if you get into people who take Satanism seriously, or just non-Christian or occult kind of spiritualities, like you realize that, no, there's a serious element to it, and it doesn't have to do with just saying Christians suck.
Right.
Actually, it's very much not about that.
Yeah, exactly. He's kind of like pulling this narrative out of thin air here that because the band uses like religious imagery and wording in their songs, that indicates a movement in the culture back towards religion. And somehow that means that more people are going to be saved as a result of that. I mean, that's a cool story. Like, that's a cool narrative, but like, that's all it is. It's just a story. He can't like prove or have evidence for that being the case. Yeah. It's also a very convenient story for Knowles because it basically allows him to have his cake and eat it too. Yeah. He can, on one hand, blame all of like the perception of like cultural decay on like scary Satanists. Yeah. But at the same time, he can still claim that he's winning and that his group is in control. Yeah. Like, guys, look how bad this is. These are our enemies. We must scorn them. Also, this means that we're winning and that we're in charge and rightfully so. Yeah, he's like saying that things are getting worse and here's evidence for why things are getting worse and these people are to blame. But also, because things are getting worse, that also means that I'm winning somehow. And things are getting better. And like things are getting better and that like Christianity's winning. Like, this is what happens when you have a preset narrative. You have to find ways to twist and distort whether the facts or logic or something in order to make everything fit your narrative that, there's supreme evil, you must fight against it, but even though I've just purposely scared you with this in order to motivate you to give me money, we're also winning. We're also the good guys. You're safe with me. Yeah. And also just the claim that all Ghost is trying to do is just be blasphemous and just give a big middle finger to Christianity. And they're purposely trying to pull away people from Christianity and religion in general. I mean, to me, that is just so laughable. And it shows his just complete misunderstanding for what Ghost represents. Oh, yeah. And I think to kind of illustrate that, what I want to do is go through the first 3 albums from Ghost, just give a brief summary of the narrative that's contained in each of those albums, because I think that will show that's not what Ghost cares about. It's not about killing Christianity. Yeah, it's not about killing Christianity. So I do want to say real quick before I get into the albums that I gleaned a lot of this from the podcast called The Gospel of Ghost, which is a podcast that breaks down each song in the first 3 albums individually and analyzes them for like their meaning. Of course, there isn't one way to interpret any Ghost song. Ghost always has multiple layers to their songs. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that my interpretation here or the narrative that I'm going to talk about here is for sure the narrative that was like intended by Tobias and the other writers, but this is what I've taken from it. Okay. Let's start with the first album, which is Opus Eponymous. This album has to do with impending doom or coming evil. They're setting up the Satanic Church. They even develop an anti-Nicene creed in the song Satan Prayer. It's the lyrics to that song are literally the Nicene Creed, but Satanized. Yeah. And they are paving the way for the Antichrist. It's not clear what their motive is for turning to Satan and establishing a satanic church. It's hypothesized by people, by the Gospel of Ghost, that they've seen the atrocities committed by Christians and think that the Christian church has put the world down the wrong path, and they're turning to Satan to try an alternative. Or it could be that they think that the world is beyond help and just needs to be destroyed, so they're trying to bring about the end times through the birth of the Antichrist. Okay. At the end of Opus and the song Prime Mover, we observe that the Antichrist has been conceived and is in the womb of a nun.
It's all for you.
And interestingly, that nun in the next album turns out to be Lilith.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Horrendously blasphemous stuff.
Okay, so moving on to the second album, which is Infestisumam. In this album, the Antichrist arrives, the Satanic Church grows, and eventually takes over the Christian Church as the dominant religious power.
Ooh, spooky.
And the last song of the album, Monstrance Clock, which is a great song, it's one of my favorites. Papa leads a satanic service where the congregants are hypnotized by horns of ram and all participate in ritual orgy.
Of course.
Unlike within Christianity, where sex is viewed as particularly transgressive, sex within the Satanic Church is celebrated and viewed as particularly sacred. As a way to sway the populace and secure power, the Satanic Church and Papa portrays itself as the way to be freed of the chains of the Church of God.
So it kind of comes to a full inversion of Christianity. No, that's not the way. This is the full way.
Mm-hmm. All right, the third album, which is Meliora, which means the pursuit of better. In this album, the Satanic Church's power continues to grow, and they're trying to convert the last holdouts to Satanism. And perhaps it's theorized, if not willingly, then by force.
Oh, classic Catholic tactics there. Nice.
There are some in this satanic society that start to be disillusioned with the Satanic Church, realizing that Satan, Papa, and the Church aren't the answer to everything. They realize they've made an error by allowing the Church of Satan to rise to such power, but at this point it's too late. In the last song of the album, Deus in absentia, which means in the absence of God, we see that humanity is left directionless after turning their back on God and giving unbridled power over to Satan, who ultimately let them down and wasn't who he promised to be.
Wait, actually, that's kind of a Christian narrative. Yeah.
Yeah, it could fall somewhat in line to like Christian ideas of like the end times and like Revelation.
That doesn't really sound like they're praising Satan as being better than God.
No.
Like, not at all. Like, not even close.
Right.
Kind of the opposite of that.
I'll talk briefly about the message that I take from this. And also, I should mention that there are 2 more albums after this. There's Prequel and Impera. Prequel is supposed to be a prequel to these albums. And I believe, my theory is Impera is supposed to be a prequel too. So they don't really have necessarily a lot to do with like this narrative that's like drawn out in each album.
Oh.
So I see the message of Ghost as a cautionary tale. In my opinion, Ghost uses inversion to illustrate how sacred symbols are co-opted by those seeking power and control. Symbols don't have inherent meaning. For example, for many Christians around the world, the cross, which is really an instrument of torture, represents hope. But for those who were victim to the Crusades, the cross would surely represent tyranny and subjugation.
Yeah.
In the lore of Ghost, Papa and the clergy are on a mission to dominate the world and to impart on all people the belief that their satanic church is the only hope and the only way forward. From the lyrics of Gigolo Harmageddo, which I believe was sung from the perspective of the Antichrist, it says, "I am the one who preys on weak. I offer everything they seek. I am the way." When societal upheaval creates a power vacuum, there will always be those who claim they are the solution to humanity's ailments in order to gain power. You should be wary of anyone who claims to have all the answers. I then ask, how different is the mission of the Satanic Church and Ghost lore from that of Christian nationalists? Both hide their desire for power and domination behind sacred cows. It's cliche, but I think it's important for us to remember that actions do speak louder than words. Just because someone might claim to be on a godly mission doesn't mean that they truly are. They may bring to the world the very things they claim to stand against: evil, corruption, and chaos. No one religious sect should hold all the power. This always leads to negative outcomes for the common man. To prevent something like this from happening, I believe we should do what we can to promote tolerance and religious plurality. God and Satan must coexist. All of this being said, I also do think it's a mistake to make the claim that Ghost isn't sacrilegious or blasphemous in any way. The band is sacrilegious to people like Michael Knowles.
Yeah.
It's sacrilegious to those who can't see past their own biases and demand that everyone view the world in the same simplistic and black and white way that they view the world.
Right.
I believe Tobias is well aware of this and that he's aware that some people out there will be offended by the band's demonic image and satanic lyrical content. And that's kind of the point. The immediate pearl clutching by some outs them as reactionary and tribalistic. So what this means for me personally is that when I listen to Ghost and scream out "Hail Satan" during year 0, I acknowledge that I am engaging in an act of blasphemy, but at the same time, I'm also calling into question our culture's underlying assumptions about what's blasphemous and what's sacred.
Love it. That is just, that's not the satanic narrative that Michael Knowles thinks that any Satanist would believe. It's not even close. It's so much more complicated than that, so much more nuanced and hopeful and beautiful and complex. Yeah.
And Tobias has said that he does, like, Satan does hold kind of a place of reverence in his life. He sees Satan as like symbolizing freedom. Mm-hmm. So, but he's never actually said that he's like a Satanist. So, like, I don't know if he would say that or that he is or not, but it's clear that he really looks at religion and all of its complexities and sees that spirituality and religion and faith aren't necessarily bad things, but in the wrong person's hands, they can be very bad and destructive.
Yeah, the thing that it seems like Tobias and a lot of Satanists really oppose is just totalitarian power, people who are in authority and don't deserve that authority. Yeah. Yeah. That's really what it comes down to.
That really is. And like most Satanists aren't theistic. They don't believe in like a literal devil. They see Satan as a symbol of like rebellion against tyranny. Right. All right. So this is the end of his video. It wasn't very long, but there was a lot to like analyze with that. Yeah. So I thought we would end this video by talking about our favorite Ghost song. So why don't you go ahead first, because I obviously have a very particular song in mind and have a lot of thoughts about it.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm going to give probably a cliche answer. Okay. Year 0.
Oh, yeah, but you know what? That is kind of cliche, but, well, actually, it's not as cliche as saying Square Hammer.
Okay. I mean, it's not Mary on a Cross or Square Hammer. It's, Year 0, I just like the way that they use, classical, like a feature of classical music into, like, a metal song and make it work so well. And it's combining the, what I see as a representation of the Romantic era Satanism. So with, like, that kind of classical style that would have been contemporary with the Romantics. And then combining it with the musical style of Satanists today, which is metal, right? Or at least like allegedly that's their style.
Also, Year 0 is the most fun one to see live.
Oh yeah.
Like the performance is just amazing. And I love when Papa does his like, you know, the lights go down and then Papa does this little twirl.
And he's like backwards at the end. Yeah. It is fun to be in an auditorium with like thousands of people all saying "Hail Satan" in the middle of Cincinnati, a very Christian city.
Yeah, that is quite fun. Okay, so my favorite one, guess which one it is.
I don't have to guess. I know what it is. You should just tell the people.
Okay. It's He Is. And He Is basically a worship song to the devil, and it's in a very like hymnal worship style.
Surprise! The person who used to basically be a worship leader, loves a satanic worship song.
I think that's why I gravitated to that song, because even before I had as much knowledge of Ghost as I have now, and I was kind of just like first getting into Ghost, I really did gravitate towards He Is. And I think it is because it's a worship song and it's fun to play on guitar.
Yeah.
To me, the song also has spiritual significance because I identify a bit as a Satanist. And so to me, the symbol of Satan represents like freedom and like the pursuit of knowledge and like healthy rebellion. And when I listen to He Is, I kind of see like He is as myself. Like when it talks about He is the, or what are the lyrics? He is the shining and the light without whom I cannot see. And He is insurrection. He is spite. He's a force that made me be. I really see that as myself. And like the song doesn't necessarily end happy, because it starts out like the beginning of the song. It says, we're standing here by the abyss and the world is in flames. That obviously isn't good. And at the end of the song, they're falling over the precipice.
Yeah.
But to me, I see the abyss as symbolizing the unknown and going into the world not completely sure that I have all the answers or have everything really figured out.
Yeah.
But I know that I have it within myself to have confidence and go into the world kind of boldly. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But...
So you like falling over the precipice. For you, like inserting yourself into the song it was intentional. It was an intentional act of exploration and seeking of knowledge and independence.
Yeah, like I don't know what lies at the bottom of this abyss. I don't know what's going to happen when I jump off the precipice, but I'm doing it anyways.
Yeah, I like that.
So I have a little fun fact about this song. Okay. So it was originally written as She Is. It was in part kind of like a romantic song for Tobias's now wife. Mm-hmm. When it was written, I think that they were just dating. But this song was also a tribute to one of Tobias's friends, Salim Lamouchi. And I'm sorry if I'm like mispronouncing that. He's Dutch. I'm probably really mispronouncing that. But he was in the occult rock band The Devil's Blood, and tragically he took his own life. And The Devil's Blood has a song called She, and the demo version of He Is was actually supposed to be She Is.
Okay. And
it's like obvious when you listen to that song by The Devil's Blood, it says like, she is the only one who understands. And the she, Salim actually subscribed to a type of Satanism where the like satanic figure was feminine.
Okay. So
like she is like Satan to him.
Gotcha.
And also The Devil's Blood sounds a lot like Ghost. And so I think that that band really influenced Tobias's writing and music making.
Yeah.
It's a really good band. Like you guys should definitely check it out. It kind of sounds similar to Coven and Black Widow. Similar vibe. To wrap things up here, I really do think that Michael Knowles just needs to get his taint tickled. He would understand it if he just got his taint tickled a little bit. Just a little tickle.
I would love to see him in the crowd at a Ghost show, just like standing there having like as little fun as humanly possible, being like, I want to go back to my stuffy little study here. Like it's probably fake, but like I want to go back to my stuffy little study and read the same 3 verses from the book of Matthew over and over again and cry myself to sleep because everything in my life is so boring. Like man, he needs his taint tickled.
He needs a good taint tickling. Before we sign off, I did want to briefly thank a couple people whose work I used heavily when I was researching for this video. So the first person is Niall from the Gospel of Ghost. I'll link the podcast down in the description if you guys do want to check it out. It's pretty interesting. Then also La Carmina, who wrote the Little Book of Satanism, which I actually have right here. It's so pretty. And if you guys want to read something that goes over the history of Satanism, then I highly recommend this. Then also Joseph Laycock, who wrote The Exorcist Effect. I mentioned that before. And then also Justin Sledge and his YouTube channel, Esoterica. I used a couple of his videos during my research process. So I'll link everybody's stuff down in the description if you guys want to check out their things as well.
I'm already friends with 2 of those people. I'm going to make friends with the other 2 now.
Thanks so much for watching, and a huge thank you to my patrons who help make these videos possible. If you like this video, please be sure to subscribe and ring the bell. If you'd like to follow me on social media, my Instagram is Taylor_the_antibot. Sorry, he's making so many noises. And if you'd like to consider supporting this channel financially, a link to my Patreon will be down in the description, and we'll see you on the next one. Say bye!